Welcome to the Faroe Islands. I just got here from Iceland. I was over there for 10 days running my Highlands workshop, which was absolutely amazing. I'll show you some of my favorite photos from that trip here in just a moment. But that workshop was incredible. The participants received some of the best conditions, I should say the most consistently good conditions that I've ever seen in Iceland. There's almost always a couple days here and there where the weather is just absolutely awful, but we were never forced to stay in the hotel one time. We were pretty much able to shoot for 7 days straight, which was absolutely incredible. But I just arrived in the Faroe Islands. I've got a couple-day break before my workshop begins here. And I'm super excited about this trip as well. But first, I want to show you some of my favorite images from the Highlands trip. So right here, this is just these incredible hot springs that we were able to visit. These are all lightly edited. I probably put maybe a 10-minute edit on each of these, maybe a little bit less, but I like to do that whenever I, select the photographs that I think I really enjoy. I put a quick edit on there, and it helps me to, I guess, identify whether or not these are my favorite photos. So these are a quick edit, definitely not completed, but they're also not raw files either. But I really, really like the way that this one turned out. Here's another one of this incredible crater. For scale, you can see our vehicles right down here. This crater was just absolutely massive, which is really, really cool to witness something like this. And of course, puffins. I have never seen puffins in my entire life. So when I finally got to see these, I was just so excited. Out of all my trips to Iceland, I've never seen them one time. And I have been told that in the Faroes, I'm going to see them everywhere. But nevertheless, I was pretty pumped to be able to witness these in Iceland, and just to be able to photograph these was a very, very nice treat. Once again, some incredible craters. I love just the kind of just like the moody, dark look to this one. And this is another one of the hot springs that we were able to photograph. And I love this person standing right here in the midst of this fog or not fog, it's the steam from the hot springs, and then the rising sun behind it, which is really, really nice. And then here's another one. It seemed like everywhere in the Highlands, this is actually me running up this hill, which I think is pretty funny. I've never actually made my own environmental portrait before, but I thought that was nice. But all over the Highlands are these areas of steam that are constantly billowing out. And it is so nice. It's like having these built-in fog machines just randomly placed all over the place, which was really, really cool. And then here is another one. Once again, really like this person standing right here. Used a faster shutter speed to kind of get this hot spring kind of boiling up, which was really nice as well. And then this right here is just a very iconic location in the Highlands of Iceland, which I was very happy to be able to have the opportunity to photograph. And this is the photograph I'm going to work on right here. So let me pull this up real quick. So this is going to be an HDR blend. As you can see, this is the dark frame, the lighter frame, a little bit lighter, and the lighter frame there. So basically this frame right here was captured pretty much for the sky. And then this frame right here was pretty much captured for the land and everything else. But a 5-image HDR blend. I'm going to stitch all this together in Lightroom and just show you kind of what that initial edit process for me looks like. So now that I have all of these highlighted, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click any of these. It doesn't really matter which one of these you right click. And I'm going to come up here to Photo Merge and just simply hit HDR. And then I'm going to hit merge. I always just leave this deghost amount on none and select auto, or leave auto align select. And you can leave auto settings selected as well. What it's going to do is it's going to allow Lightroom to put kind of an initial kind of edit on it, just based off of what it feels is the appropriate way to move certain sliders, I should say. You're definitely going to probably want to change all of them, but it's good for directional purposes. Just kind of get you going a little bit. So I'm going to hit merge here and give Lightroom a few seconds to finish this. You can see it's creating the HDR right here, and there it is. So now that the HDR blend is complete, now we can go ahead and start to edit this photograph. And if we compare these to the original ones, you can see that, these are the darker frames right through here, and then these are the brighter frames, and this one kind of captures all of that. It's got a lot of the detail in the sky still, a lot of the detail in the shadows, and it also has a lot of the detail in the brighter areas of the photograph as well. Now, when I come up here to the develop section, you'll see that Lightroom went ahead and put an initial edit on here, and it only does this in the basic section. It doesn't do this in the tone curve or color mixer or calibration or any of those other areas. It's just in the basic section, and it's just real basic adjustments. So what I'm gonna do is I definitely think that Lightroom brightened this up a little bit too much. So I'm going to reduce the exposure a little bit. We'll leave the contrast where it is right now. I'm not going to crank the highlights down too much because I'm going to do create a specific mask just for the sky. I don't like to bring the highlights down to -100 to make the sky look better, because then you're destroying all your highlights in the other areas of your photograph that you might want to preserve. So as far as the shadows, I'm going to bring the shadows up just a touch more. The whites, I kind of want to make that white in the snow pop a little more, so I'm going to bring that up just a touch. And then the black point, I'm going to bring that back a little bit as well. I'm going to reduce the clarity a little bit. I'm going to bring up the texture a touch, which is kind of my go-to workflow a little bit. I think that's a great way to kind of soften the photograph down just a little bit, reduce a lot of the detail and the larger size detail in the scene, while at the same time increasing the texture of the photograph, which is enhancing the smaller size detail in the scene. And I feel like that is just a good way to just soften the overall photograph just a little bit, while at the same time not losing all the beautiful detail that you captured. Now I'm going to come over here to the white balance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the color picker, and I'm just going to find a somewhat of a neutral area. I think that looks pretty good right there. It did make an adjustment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the vibrance to 100, I'm going to take the saturation to 100, and I'm just going to really evaluate the scene, because the reason I do that is because it helps me to be able to easily identify whether or not there is any kind of color cast. So does let's just say color cast, any type of color imbalance. So do the cool tones overtake the warm tones, and do the warm tones overtake the cool tones? I really want to kind of keep those somewhat in balance, and that kind of trick helps me to identify what an appropriate white balance for a scene actually is. So when I look at this right here, it definitely looks like the warm tones are overtaking the cool tones, which isn't surprising because the majority of this photograph is the land leading up to this beautiful mountain, and there are more warm tones in there, so I kind of want to keep that in the back of my mind. So I am going to cool it down just a touch more to something about right there, and I think that looks a little bit better. And now I'm going to reset the vibrance and saturation to 0. I know the image looks kind of washed out now, it's just because our eyes instantly got used to the way it looked at vibrance plus 100 and saturation plus 100. But as you know, there's a lot of the other different ways that I like to enhance color in the photograph other than using those two sliders. So let's just toggle the entire edit on and off right now. This is kind of what we have done so far. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close down the basics section. Let's come up here to mask. Let's just start off by using the sky tool. It did a pretty good job at enhancing, or I should say masking out the sky. And let's bring that exposure down a fair amount. Let's bring those highlights down some, maybe include a little bit of contrast in there. Then come down to clarity to kind of bring out some of I was just going to say the design, but it's a little bit of the structure in those streaks of clouds, which is really nice. And I'm also going to come over here to color, and I want to add a little bit more magenta into the scene, because there was already these magenta kind of wispy clouds across the top, which I really, really enjoyed, and I want to bring that out. So I'm not going to go overboard, nothing crazy, but maybe we'll just start right here. Maybe add a little bit of warmth to that sky as well, because it's looking just a little bit too cool. And I think that is a pretty good spot. Now what I want to do, you see how the sky is light up here? I'm going to add a linear gradient there. I'm going to just drag it across here, just bring it down to the mountains to about right there. And then I'm going to darken this. And the reason I do that is because I feel like when the sky exits the frame and the sky is brighter than the rest of the sky at that point, I feel like it kind of loses its, let me say it this way. When you put that linear gradient on there and you darken that light area where it hits the border of your frame, I feel like it kind of keeps the photograph in place a little bit more. And as I toggle that on and off, let's come up here so you can see that. You can see what a difference that did. And I do that in all photographs where the sky exits the frame at the top and it's brighter. So I think that looks better. And as I toggle this on and off, you can see what that has done. Now what I'm going to do is I want to put a vignette on this photograph. I'm not going to adjust the color yet, but I want to put a vignette on here, but I don't want to use the standard vignette tool, mainly because this side is already darker than all the other corners. So I can't do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a custom vignette on this photograph. So I'm going to make the scene small, and I'm going to come up here to the plus sign. Let's hit radial gradient, draw a big radius around the entire scene like this. I'm going to leave the feather at 100, and I'm going to select invert. And ultimately, I'm targeting now everything outside of my mask. So I'm going to open this up even more. I'm actually going to bring this feather to 75, I think. Make this mask even bigger like this. I think is starting to look pretty good. I'm going to open up this mask and I'm going to hit subtract, and I want to subtract with the brush. I want to make this flow at 100. I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger. And ultimately what I want to do is I want to paint this mask away from this corner over here and kind of around the bottom area. This whole area, I don't want this mask applied at all. So something to about right here. I'm going to change this flow to 50 and just make a couple swipes over here on the edges just so it's not an abrupt end. I think that looks pretty good. And now as I bring the exposure down, you can see the area that it's targeting. So I think that that looks a little bit better. So now it's going to give me the ability to darken the corners of the scene that were already not naturally darkened. So it kind of makes a more uniform vignette, if you will. And I think that that is looking a little bit better. Now let's come back up here to fit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add one more mask, and I'm going to do another radial gradient. I'm going to draw this one around the center part of the photograph to about right here. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. I think it's something about like that. And I want to bring the exposure up here a little bit because this is the star of the show, if you will. There's all this beautiful texture, all the beautiful snow, and of course the mountains. So I want to bring additional exposure, a little bit additional luminance or brightness to that area. So I'm going to bring that up a little bit, and I'm also going to enhance the detail in that area as well. So I'm going to come up here to clarity, bring that up to maybe 20. We'll bring up a texture to maybe about 20 as well. So we're really enhancing all the detail in the main subject of the photograph. We're also enhancing the exposure in that area as well because I want to draw the viewer's eye into that part of the scene. And I think that that is starting to look pretty good. I think I'm going to actually use a little bit of dehaze in this area as well. I think that maybe just an ever so slight amount to about right there. And as you toggle this on and off, you can see what that has done. Let's make this a little bit bigger as well. And now that I kind of drew the viewer's attention to the center and brighten that area up, I'm going to darken the overall photograph because I brightened it up more than I normally would because I knew that I was going to end up bringing this exposure down just a touch to about right there. Let me come over here to the mask one more time. I do want to bring this up just a little bit further. So I think that that is starting to look pretty nice right there. What I'm going to do is I want to come over here to the tone curve. I'm going to bring up this black point just a touch just to kind of fade those blacks a little bit. I'm going to bring down those darker midtones. I'm also going to bring up the midtones here to something about like that. As I toggle that on and off, you can really see what that has done. It's starting to come together. And the histogram is really starting to fill itself out. It was kind of pushed all the way to the left or pushed more to the left, but now it's starting to fill itself out, stretch from the darker tones to the lighter tones in a nice curve in the center. And I think that this is good. Let me just bring this up just a touch more. Maybe bring this down a little bit as well. I'm gonna come back up here to the basic section and just reduce that overall exposure just ever so slightly to about right there. I think looks good. And let's bring this black point up a little bit more just to kind of soften things just a touch. I feel like that tone curve might be a little excessive. Bring this up I think that looks good. Starting to feel a little bit too contrasty for my liking. So now that a lot of that kind of heavy lifting is done as far as shadows and highlights and tone curves and vignettes and masks, what I want to do is go ahead and enhance the color. One of my favorite parts. So I'm going to come over here to the calibration section and I'm going to bring this up quite a bit. And I want to get to a point to where these are kind of overdone. So bring that up a fair amount, bring the red primary up a fair amount. I think that looks good. Do I want to do anything with these hues? We'll maybe bring the blue primary hue to the left just a touch. And I don't believe I want to do, maybe bring that green primary hue to the right just a touch as well. Toggle this on and off. And I think that has definitely reached that point to where it looks a little bit overdone. And now I'm going to go to stage 2 of my color editing process and come over here to color mixer. Select saturation, and I'm going to desaturate every single channel here to the point to where we now have a black and white photograph. And now I'm going to start at the bottom, start at the magenta, work my way up and slowly introduce these colors back in. So magenta, no magenta, purple, little bit of purple. So let's kind of bring that up just a touch, or not a touch, but not bring it all the way up to 0, but reduce it a little bit. Because remember, we're working with an overly saturated photo at this point. Take the blues, and I know there's a lot of blue, so maybe bring the blue to there. Well, maybe not that much. Bring it back a little bit more to maybe about there. Aquas, a little bit of aqua, just leave it at 0. I know there's a little bit of green kind of right through here. As I toggle this or swing this back and forth, you can see that. So I'm just going to leave that at 0. I know there's going to be a fair amount of yellow. I'm going to bring the yellows to about there. There's also going to be a lot of orange. So I'm going to bring the oranges to about there. In red, I don't see a lot of red, but I'm just going to leave that right there. I think the oranges might be a touch overdone, so we'll bring that to maybe -12, looks pretty good. And now I'm going to come over here to luminance, and I want to make that kind of orange area just pop a little bit more. This is a great way to kind of dodge and burn with color, if you will, by just increasing the luminance value or the brightness value of certain colors. So I'm going to bring that up a touch. The yellow, I'm going to do the same thing with that as well. To a point, to about right there, I think looks pretty good. As we toggle this on and off, you can see what that has done. I think the blue in that sky might still be a little bit overdone, so we'll bring that back a touch as well. Now let's toggle the entire edit on and off. That's before and after, before and after. And now I want to just look at the photograph, I want to survey it, and I want to kind of ask myself, what are my favorite aspects of this scene? And I really want to enhance those areas. I want to make sure that the viewer doesn't kind of gloss over the photograph and not see those. So for me, the steam right here and the steam right here, unfortunately I made a mistake and kind of cut this off here, but that's okay. But the steam here, here, and here, I really want to enhance these. So I'm going to come up here, let's do a new mask. Let's just use a radial gradient. And let's just draw a radius right around this steam right here. We'll kind of bring it back. And since the steam is white, since the steam is almost a highlight, we'll use the white and highlight slider to enhance those areas. I'm going to bring the feather to 50. And as I bring the highlights up and back and forth, you can see what that's doing. So we'll bring that up a touch. We'll also bring the whites up a little bit as well. Nothing crazy, just to about right there. And as I toggle that on and off, you can see how that area of the steam just is emphasized a little bit more. It could potentially grab the viewer's attention. I'm going to right click, I'm going to hit duplicate, and I'm going to drag this radius over here to this one, to about right here. I think that looks good. Let's toggle them both on and off now. You can see what that is doing. It's just brought a little bit of additional exposure to those areas. And I'm not going to do that to this one down here because it's at the very edge of the photograph and I really don't want to draw the viewer's eye towards the bottom of the photograph. Unfortunately, I missed that area and I cut it off. I wish that I would have included more of it, but since it's so close to the edge, I'm just going to leave it alone for right now. One more thing is I really love the sweeping nature of this right here, and I want to just add a little bit of additional luminance to this area. So I'm going to select Create New Mask. I'm going to select Brush, bring the exposure up a lot. I like to bring it up more than I normally would because it just helps me to see a little bit better. I'm going to reduce the brush, leave the flow at 50, and just take a couple small little brush strokes all right through here along this ridge line to about right there. And let's turn the show overlay off. And as you can see, as I toggle this on and off, there's a huge difference. But once I have it, I should say the brush painted, now I'll just kind of make the adjustments to the exposure. So I'm going to bring this down now to a more realistic value. Something to about maybe right there looks good. And let's toggle all of these masks on and off. I like the way that looks. Close this down and let's go ahead and turn on and off, or toggle on and off the entire before and after. So this is before and after, before and after, and a huge, huge difference. And this is the initial edit process that I went through. Probably went a little bit longer because I was kind of talking through it all. But normally I'll spend maybe 5 or maybe 10 minutes on these initial edits, and then I'll just leave them alone for a few days, and then I'll revisit them, and it'll help me to identify whether or not this is one of my favorite photos from a trip, and it'll tell me if I need to go on and continue to do the editing process to really, really fine tune it. But I do this on every single one of my photographs. The images that I showed at the beginning of this video right through here, all of these, I did that same exact process through too. And it helps me to figure out whether or not, what are my favorite photographs from a trip, and whether or not, I went too far with an edit, or whether or not this isn't really that great of a photograph and I shouldn't continue with an edit. But this is definitely the very first stage after I go ahead and cull my photographs and identify which ones I think are the best. So I do hope that initial process was helpful or interesting, or maybe you were able to get at least one helpful piece of information out of this week's video. If you have any questions about the process that I go through, please leave those in the comments section below, and I will do my best to get back in touch with you as soon as humanly possible. And if you did enjoy this week's video, if you could, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed as already. And as always, I really do appreciate you carving out a little bit of time to spend it with me here today. And I'll see you all next Wednesday. Bye.